So, let me bring in my think tank, because the question here tonight is, what does the jury do with all of this? What does this mean? Does the jury believe that this entire family was snookered by police and cut them a break? Or do they believe that this is just, police procedure? This is the way they have to get to the truth in the case. Joining me from outside the courthouse in Lebanon, Ohio, Derek Myers, editor-in-chief for the Scioto Valley Guardian. In studio, criminal defense attorneys Latasha Barnes, Michael Bixson, and Ashley McMahan. Welcome to you all. Derek, let me begin with you, because you're out there. How is this playing locally now? The fact that, this family basically just cooperated their way into an aggravated murder trial.
Yeah, we do not get a lot of these trials in Warren County, but this is something that the prosecution thought they had when they presented this in an indictment to the grand jury, and now they're starting to see that this is being a troubling case for them. The local community here, of course, had this young girl guilty before she even had a jury seated, but now that things are working out the way that they're planning, people are starting to see perhaps maybe there is reasonable doubt planted not only by the defense but also by the prosecution, and perhaps that she may not be guilty of all these charges as she's charged in the indictments.
I'm a father too, and I'm wondering what this dad is thinking tonight. Is he just angry with police? Is he angry with himself for being naive?
I think it's both. I mean, imagine what a nightmare to think that you're doing everything right, everything that a law-abiding citizen, just as you said, Vinnie, would think to do. You'd have no idea if you're not an attorney. And I've been a prosecutor, and now I'm a defense attorney. I've been on both sides. And the way that they play the game, I don't think is going to play well with the jury. I think the jury is hearing this and thinking, oh no, I probably would have done the same thing if I were in his position, and look how this turned out. I mean, it's just terrible for everyone involved.
There's no murder trial without that second interrogation, is there?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, the evidence is as thin as it could possibly be, and they are just relying on nothing but...
I'm agreeing with the defense attorneys tonight, folks. Mark it down. Mark it down, please.
But really, I mean, without that, there's nothing here. And even with it, it's just about as thin as it could be, as I said. And look, I can't blame them, because people get in their head, they think, oh, well, if I cooperate, this is going to go away. This is in my best interest to work with the police. And it clearly was not, and usually is not. I think it's a shining example of that.
Yeah, and tonight we're talking about this because this is the first witness for the defense. This is a father who obviously loves his daughter, but we saw in the interrogation videos that, he was not happy, he was shocked, he was angry, and admitted to all of that. How does the jury unpack all of this? Do they at all feel sympathy for this father and this family, or do they feel like, hey, police did what they had to do to get to the truth?
I think that they feel sympathy for this family. In his testimony, he stated that basically he didn't have to have a lawyer. That's what the police told him. They said that she was not going to be in any trouble. He didn't have to have a lawyer. So I believe that he felt that he was tricked into this, and his daughter was tricked into this. And I believe that they're going to feel sympathy for the daughter here and for the family.
All right, I want to take another look at some testimony from the father, and this relates to the mother. Okay, take a listen.
Why hasn't Kim been in the courtroom since the start of the trial?
She was subpoenaed by the prosecution, and therefore she's not allowed to be in the courtroom. But she's been here every day.
Dig. She was subpoenaed by the prosecution, but she was never called to testify. Wow, we're going to talk a lot more about that later on in the program, but let's just start with the fact that he's explaining everything here, and he's kind of taking the jury behind the scenes through this witness. Is that effective stuff here?
Oh, it's very effective. There's a word that even as a defense attorney or a prosecutor, you never want to use during trial, and you never want to say the word liar. You never want to call anybody liar because it's such a strong word. But I think the jury is getting real close to thinking, okay, so the cops told him you don't need a lawyer. She's not going to be charged with anything. She's fine. And they're going to say, oh yeah, they tricked him. But really the word that they're thinking is they lied to him. And that is not good for the prosecution in this case. I mean, it's just so bad. And they did the same thing by subpoenaing the mother and then never calling her as a witness, because now she's being sequestered the entire time.
I agree, and I think it's important that he pointed that out to the jurors because they might get in their head, why isn't she sitting there? Why isn't she here? Does she not support her daughter? Does she not believe in her? Getting those facts out, I think it's critical to the case.
Yeah, and it humanizes the daughter as well. I mean, the jury's like, where's the mother? Where her father's here, where's the mother? So therefore, to give an explanation of why the mother is not in the courtroom and that she would be there if she could.
You know, humanizing this defendant has to be done by the defense, Derek, doesn't it? Because the way this played early on, this 18-year-old was evil. Evil.
This is the first time that the jury is actually hearing from anyone from inside those interrogation videos in person inside the courtroom, of course, aside from the detectives. So when Scott Richardson walked up to the stand today, the jury perked up. Earlier this week, we saw jurors gazing off into the ceiling. Some of them were picking their nails in their face. But when his name was called and he walked up to the stand this morning, they all perked up as if they just took a sip of coffee. So it was interesting to see that it got their attention real quick. They wanted to hear from him. And we could see people in the courtroom. They were engaged in this testimony. They were listening. It's worth noting, Vinnie, that Miss Richardson was not in the courtroom today or at all this week or last week. And it's making the prosecution look like bullies, really. The fact that the police are allowed to lie to the defendant and to her parents and turn around and not even call her mother, it is looking like they are bullies.
All right, want to take a look at more testimony from Skylar Richardson's father today. Here again talking about the communications between Skylar Richardson and her mother, Kim, and what he knew or didn't know about all of that.
Were you aware that she was cheering Skylar on to lose weight?
I was not.
You aware that she was doing it when Skylar was a sophomore and Skylar sent her selfies in the mirror when she was a sophomore in high school?
I was not.
The significance of this is those communications between mother and daughter were a big part of the prosecution case. But what the defense is trying to do is establish that these communications just didn't start at the time of the pregnancy or after this pregnancy. This is throughout her entire life. So what is a jury going to do with that? Is the jury getting a different picture now that, all right, there's a little bit of dysfunction here between mom and daughter about what she looks like? And what does that mean?
I think the jury is at least going to see that there's some pressure on her. You know, she's a competitive cheerleader, right? You know, she's in high school. She's a young, beautiful adolescent girl. And it's obvious that the father was not necessarily aware that maybe mom was putting a bit more pressure on her than most of us would think, you know, is necessary for a happy, healthy home.
Does that cut both ways, though? Can't the prosecution turn around and use that? Because they did talk about this dysfunction. Excuse me, folks, if you hear an alarm there, I'm okay. That's just an alert I get about my blood sugar levels as a diabetic. Sorry, folks. Don't be alarmed, though. Okay.
So I think this was critical for them to get in as well. You know, for them to point out sort of the things that the pressure that she was going under every day of her life from her mother, from her friends, and how concerned she might be with the way that she appears and how that might play.
Speaking of concern, my producer's very concerned about me, so he wants me to get some juice here. So we're going to take a break. We'll be back, folks. Don't worry.
Brooke Skylar Richardson seemed like a typical teenager, a high school cheerleader enjoying her senior year and planning to go to college. But the 18-year-old had a secret, one she didn't tell her parents, her boyfriend, or even her closest friends. On April 26, 2017, a doctor informed Richardson she was pregnant, already in her final term. What happened next remains a mystery. Prosecutors say the high school senior refused prenatal care and told no one she was expecting.
There were a significant number of people in her life who had strong suspicion.
In the middle of the night, police say she gave birth at home, killed her baby, and buried the remains in her parents' backyard.
She's 38 to 40 weeks pregnant at the prom, which is 2 days before this happened.
But Richardson claims she delivered a stillborn, a girl she named Annabelle, before digging an outside grave. No one else would know Annabelle existed until months later at a routine doctor visit.
Prosecutors say it was May 6th or 7th when Richardson gave birth to her baby girl.
The baby's remains were not discovered until July 14th after investigators received a tip from a doctor.
On July 12, 2017, Richardson admitted to her physician that she gave birth to a stillborn and buried it herself. The doctor's office called police. After investigators uncovered the makeshift grave, prosecutors charged the would-be teen mother with reckless homicide and then aggravated murder. Richardson also faces charges of involuntary manslaughter, endangering a child, and abuse of a corpse.
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Rakers, what is the plea? Not guilty, Your Honor.
Meanwhile, in Lebanon, Ohio, the teen's defense team says Richardson is still that typical teenager, not a murderer, but a girl struggling with bulimia who faced a sudden pregnancy loss.
All right, big day today. It's day one of the defense case. All right, so dad testified. Yeah, they had an expert OBGYN testify, but there's another expert who testified late in the day. And talking about an issue we've been talking about a lot here. Because remember, the direct evidence of aggravated murder in this case comes from interrogation number 2. It is the confession. So the defense called to the stand a false confession expert. Take a listen.
What is your assessment?
The officers in the July 20th interrogation of the defendant used a very aggressive version of the Reed technique.
Can you explain that to the jury?
So right at the outset, they told Schuyler that with medical scientific certainty, her account where the baby was stillborn was false. That is standard confrontation. And then they advanced any number of minimization themes. They led on that the main purpose of this interrogation was a burial for the baby, a proper burial. They told her that they knew she didn't harm the baby deliberately. They said that she had been alone and in shock. These are all fairly typical minimization themes, but they went beyond that. They made 2 statements that I found particularly problematic. Lieutenant Fain said to her, "It's not as if we're suddenly going to jump up and judge you and say you're going to jail." And Detective Carter said to her, "You just tell us everything and then we can move on." Both of these comments indicate that the suspect will receive 0 punishment if she confesses. Not a light sentence, not a benign treatment, but 0 punishment.
So, the question that I have for my think tank tonight is, was this confession coerced and false and unreliable, or was it the best evidence in the case and the reason why this 18-year-old is guilty of aggravated murder? It's a long compound question, I know. But let me bring back my think tank. What about the expert? I know experts can be bought and paid for, but at the end of the day, the jury's got to trust this confession.
Honestly, I think his characterization that their style or technique with her was aggressive is an understatement. I mean, they put words into this young girl's mouth time and time again. And that's a normal police tactic. And we've seen it on Court TV with other, interview styles and with other defendants who were bad people and who ended up, having committed multiple crimes. And it seems like the more, experienced the criminal, the more wary they are of this tactic and the more they seem to get away with. And this poor girl, I mean, honestly, in my opinion, they just really shoved this down her throat. And the thing is, juries aren't stupid. They've been watching shows like How to Make a Murderer and things like that, and they know what to look for. And just like Derek said, this whole prosecution and these detectives are coming off as bullies, and gosh, no part about that confession looked not forced to me.
Oh, I completely agree with you. I mean, she's young, she's impressionable, and here they are lying to her face, manipulating her. I mean, she's saying over and over and over how innocent she is and how she didn't do anything wrong. And eventually, she's going to agree with him, whether she did anything or whether she didn't, just based on the lies that they're telling to her face and the way that they're manipulating her. I mean, without a doubt. You know, and I've seen this. I've seen this in cases of my own. I've seen this on here. It happens over and over, and I think it's terrible. Every time I see it happen, it just, you know, words can't describe how things like this, you know, can ruin someone's life. I mean, this case wouldn't have been here if not for that whole interrogation.
Right. And Latasha, as you were talking earlier, you know, it's just like the Central Park 5.
Yes, that's what I was going to mention. I totally agree with Ashley and Michael. I think that this was absolutely coerced. In the interview, as I watched it, they talked most of the time. They didn't. She only said, I think in the transcript it was like 2,000 words, and she only spoke
I did the calculation last night.
Correct.
There are 2,400 lines. Okay, 2,400 lines in that transcript on the 96 pages.
Right.
Of the 2,400, 2,035 were the interrogators, 365 were the defendant.
My point exactly. I mean, they did all the talking. They told her what to say. She was ready to go home. She's young. She was scared, and she was going to say whatever she had to get out of there. And just like the Central Park 5, same thing. They were scared, young, and they were told that it's going to be okay. Just tell us what's happening. You're going to go home. And she thought she was going to go home, but obviously she didn't.
Derek, the biggest part for me, Derek, was the fact that they got her to admit to something that I know is false, that the baby was burned. She came up with she said she lit the baby on fire. You can't light a baby on fire. That cannot happen. It doesn't work that way with babies. You could put a flame to a baby for 4 hours. The baby's not going to catch on fire. And we know that the whole charred bones, burnt baby, it did not happen. There's zero evidence of it. There's zero evidence of any fire. And the expert who the interrogators were relying upon for their fact and their science recanted. So, but they got her to admit to burning that baby, which there's no evidence of and did not happen. Derek?
I've talked to Dr. Murray prior to this case, not about this case, but I have corresponded with Dr. Murray, of course, being local here and reporting the news. I've been in contact with her about other things, and she's really well respected in the community here. So when she says something, she means it. And we heard her say, you know, I'm not going to tell them what they want to hear. I'm not going to lie for them. And that's not what she's all about. Dr. Murray is very much about the science, and the science to her says that these bones were not burned. We heard from Paul Lemaster, the expert you had on last night, saying that this is impossible, that this did not happen, at least without an accelerant. And of course, we know from the fire marshal's report that they did not find any kind of accelerant in the dirt or the burial site surrounding where the bones were found. What we heard in the second interrogation, and I want to point this out because I don't know if this really stuck out to you, Vinnie, but it stuck out to me. And they were using this read technique on her, trying to talk to her and get her to admit that the baby had been cremated. And one of the things that Skylar Richardson does when they're bringing that up is she mentions her parents, and she says, you know, when can I see my mom? And it's as if right in this line of questioning, she thinks that and asks that question, thinking, if I tell them what they want to hear, I can see my parents and I can go home. And that's what I think. I'm going to agree with your other guest. I think she was telling them anything they wanted to hear because she just wanted to go home.
And for me, you know, I'm a former prosecutor. That's the way I see the world. That's the filter I have. But when I know that you've gotten someone to say something and admit to something that I know is false, then how do I believe anything else that she said that incriminates her? How can I trust it beyond a reasonable doubt if I know she's saying something that is factually false? Okay, moving on. When we come back, there is a witness who is in the middle of all of this case, subpoenaed by the prosecution, not allowed in the courtroom, but then didn't testify. Why didn't prosecutors call Skylar Richardson's mother to the stand? My think tank. We'll talk about that next. Brooke Skylar Richardson. She was a former cheerleader, and it's just a couple of days after prom.
If members of the community were to find out
that she gave birth,
that was something that simply was not going to be accepted.
Did she kill her own newborn baby, or was the child stillborn before she buried the body in her parents' backyard? Today, Skylar's dad took the stand for the defense, but Kim Richardson, Skylar's mother, has been noticeably absent from the courtroom. Now, she was set to testify and is really intricately tied to this case. She was there at her daughter's pretrial hearings. You see her there with the sunglasses on. It was her mom's garden shovel that Skylar used to bury the infant. Her mom took her to the doctor appointment when she found out she was pregnant. Kim Richardson made an impression on all of you when the prosecution played the video from the interrogation room and her reactions and what she said. Take a listen.
I've helped you so many times. I told you, if you just tell me, I'm always going to be here for you. I've always told you that I love you. How do you think I feel at the thought of losing my baby? I'm sorry, Mommy. I'm losing my child. And I've done everything right. You have. You just didn't stop your guys'
Okay, please stop. You guys both. We need to stop this right now. We don't know what's going to happen yet. If she told him the truth, I don't even know what they could charge her with. There's no reason to put her in prison. It doesn't mean what you did is not wrong, and it doesn't mean that it's not going to be trouble. But we don't know yet, so let's don't go there.
It's really hard for me right now. I lost my dad this year. I'm stressed about Jackson.
And the prosecution included text messages between Skylar and her mom in their case, including this one, Skylar's text to her mom on the day after she delivered baby Annabelle. Quote, "I'm literally speechless with how happy I am. My belly is back. OMG. I am never, ever, ever, ever letting it get like this again. You're about to see me look freaking better than before. OMG." They also included several text messages which point to their dynamic around Skylar's eating disorder.
May 18th, 2017, 11:28 a.m. from Skylar. Okay, thanks. You know what's crazy? When I went to gyno on April 25th, I was 149 pounds, and today on May 18th, I weigh 119 pounds. That's literally 30 pounds gone. Same date, 11:29 a.m. from Kim Richardson. Literally amazing and crazy to do the math on that. I'm so proud you do this for you, and you are so happy now. That's all I ever want for you. From Skylar, that's what I think, and I hope so, but every time I look at myself in that dress, I just cringe. I'm so afraid I'm gonna look bad. Same date, 11:42 a.m. from Kim Richardson. Turn those thoughts into how to burn as much as and do as much every single day, or else you will be sad. Get a plan in place. Only you can do that. 3:04 p.m. from Kim Richardson. Okay, boys are out. I'll get them in. Let's kill it again this week. We on a roll. Same date, 3:07 p.m. from Skylar. Agreed. I'm gonna start weighing myself every week and getting serious about this like I'm about to be boss looking. Same date, 3:07 p.m. from Kim Richardson. Could not be prouder.
Kim Richardson has been at the courthouse every day, walking in and out with her family. She was on the prosecution's witness list, so she hasn't been allowed in the courtroom. The defense asked Skylar's dad, Scott, about all of that.
Why hasn't Kim been in the courtroom since the start of the trial?
She was subpoenaed by the prosecution, and therefore she's not allowed to be in the courtroom. But she's been here every day.
But she never testified. Why didn't the prosecution call her to the stand like they apparently planned? Why not? Let me bring back to my think tank. Why didn't they call her?
Because they can sequester her and keep her outside. I think having mom have those text messages where she's so concerned about her daughter's weight and does not seem even have the slightest idea that she might be pregnant, or maybe she should have known, and there's a lot of pressure on this young girl. I think it's very sympathetic. I think it works for the defense. I don't think they want her in that courtroom.
So you're saying that they subpoenaed her just to keep her out of the courtroom during her daughter's aggravated murder trial?
Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. And my fellow colleagues
look,
disagree.
I absolutely agree. And not just that, but
is that ethical? To subpoena someone you have no intention of calling?
Not really.
It's not also not ethical to prosecute somebody unless you have a good faith basis to believe that she's guilty of aggravated murder, which I don't think they have in this case either.
And look, and they knew the whole time that if they put her on the stand, she's going to make her daughter look even more sympathetic for the pressure she put on her for her weight and her looks and how manipulative it looked from the way that she talked to her about those things. I think it would have brought up nothing but sympathy for her daughter. And I don't think they wanted that. I think it was whether it was ethical or not, but it was smart for them to keep her outside of there for that purpose at least.
I don't like that. I mean, if I'm not intending to call someone, I should not subpoena, especially if it's a family member and her daughter's on trial for her life.
I understand what you're saying, but I agree with Michael. I think that they got everything they needed through these text messages, and they didn't want her to have an opportunity to get up there and explain herself, and for the jury to feel sympathy for her daughter because this is her mom. So I think it was smart for the prosecution to keep her out and let however these text messages in talking about her weight and that she needs to lose weight and all of this to make her, not look so sympathetic.
Derek, what's the buzz at the courthouse about this issue? I mean, is this gamesmanship or did something change or are they going to call her in their rebuttal case? What's going on?
Well, and your viewers know that they absolutely can call her in the rebuttal case. But again, going back to that, they're looking like bullies, Vinny. That's what they're looking like here. People are starting to realize that. The jury, I think, is noticing that. But we heard this morning from Scott Richardson on the stand, and of course the defense team, they were talking about the dogs. And when I heard that, and they said that one of the dogs likes to sleep with Skylar, and her father said that it favors Skylar. I heard that this morning, and something popped in my mind. I thought perhaps, are they going to make mom look like she's jealous of Skylar? Skylar's got a lot of pressure under these text messages from mom. So the defense, I think, is using this sequestering to their advantage. They see that mom's in the hallway, and I want to see what they're going to do the rest of this week. But they are certainly using it to their advantage.
Oh, the defense could call mom. Is there any reason for them?
I think they could.
To call her tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, for the same purpose that the prosecutors don't want her on the stand, sympathy, right? Now, it's going to be very hard because it's going to show the sort of messed up family dynamic that they have, and I think there's a little bit of a risk there. But at the same time, I think there's a very good sympathy that you can get out of the mom, and you think
the jury wants to hear from? It's just, in that interrogation video, there are two people holding Skylar, her hands. Skylar Richardson's hands. You've got her mom at one point, and then you've got the detective. Neither one of them has testified. Neither one of them.
I think
the lead detective has not testified, and her mom has not testified. And if I'm a juror, I'm like, what are you guys hiding from me?
Oh, I guarantee you,
Who's hiding stuff?
At the end of today, this jury definitely wants to hear from mom. I'm sure that's all they want to hear from, because we know, as defense attorneys, it's very unlikely that the defendant is going to take the stand in this case, especially in this type of case. And if we don't hear from mom, I think it's bad for the defense. I think they should call mom.
Yeah, I think mom is going to get called, definitely. She's not going to take the stand, the defendant, and I think they have to call the mom and the dad, which they have. So.
Dad, they have already. Derek, when this case first broke, right? What was the public perception of the family dynamic, and what was the public perception specifically of mom in this case?
Well, mom walks in with her oversized sunglasses in the arraignments and pretrials, as if she belongs to the Kardashian family. Mom fits somewhat, in my opinion, and what I've been reading on social media, hearing from locals in the coffee shops when I'm there, that they think mom it does want to fit that image of a perfect little suburban family. But Skylar's a cheerleader. Her brother's a senior this year. Dad has a nice cushiony job, and mom just wants to look like everything's perfect. I believe that. I believe when the prosecution says that that's true. I don't think it has anything to do with the murder or the alleged murder here, but I certainly believe that. So mom is very much involved here. People think that they think she might have known something a little more. We saw those text messages where she got the email mistakenly, which is a HIPAA violation.
Derek, let's do this.
That shouldn't have happened.
So folks know exactly what you're talking about. Let's play it. This is during Christopher Wong's testimony. Take a listen.
Same date, 9:06 a.m. from Kim Richardson. This is your email from your doctor visit. What does PT pregnant mean? And then there's an attachment.
And Detective, were you able to make a copy of that attachment?
Yes.
Putting State's Exhibit number 129 on the screen. Is this the attachment that was sent to Skylar from Kim Richardson with that message that you just read?
Yes.
Okay, continue, please.
Same date, 9:06 a.m. from Skylar, no clue. Same date, 9:07 a.m. from Skylar, I can call later or something and see. Same date, 9:07 a.m. from Kim Richardson, you should call right now. Are you joking later? Same date, 9:07 a.m. from Skylar, sorry, I just got to school, I'll call now. Same date, 9:07 a.m. from Kim Richardson, your life could potentially be over and you will call later.
All right, so I think a natural question out of that, Latasha, is do you think the jury is going to think that mom knew about the pregnancy?
I don't think so. I think from what I just heard, I think that she would have been scared to tell her mom that she was pregnant. I mean, the mother was saying your life is going to be over. Something that, I mean, that's why she didn't tell anybody. You would think that if anybody's going to tell a young girl that age, she's going to tell her mom that she's pregnant. And with something like that, well, your life is going to be over, you know, I just see her not being able to tell her mom what was going on.
Does it go beyond that? Does that then become a motive for murder?
I think it does.
Your life is going to be ruined? Your life is over.
It absolutely does. Like, it fits into the state's case that, you know, here she had this perfect life and she wanted to maintain it at any cost, including killing her own baby. This is a key part of that. Now, I think that they could have called her like we talked about earlier. But again, I think the risks were too high, and I think they got what they needed out of the transcript that they had. I think it's all they needed, at least is helping their case along.
See, now, I disagree with Michael. I don't think that, you know, it's the defendant. I don't think it's Skylar thinking she has the perfect life and now it's going to all be over. I think it's mom putting that in her head, saying, hey, you have the perfect life, or I have the semblance of a perfect life, you know, being your mother and, you know, making sure that my kids are on top and everything. And if you did this, you better not tell me about it, and you better take care of it, because I'm telling you your life is over. So I think for, you know, the prosecution, they're like, hey, mom could be motivated to have pushed her into this, and we don't want that if we want a conviction on the defendant.
All right. Derek Myers is not the only one reading social media comments, folks. I am too. When we come back, we're going to take a look at some of them and get a response from the think tank. That is next. This trial, more so than any other case that we've covered here on the relaunch of Court TV, has garnered a lot of reaction on social media. And of course, you know, people are always asking, does he even read the post? Yeah, I read them. I do read them. And if you notice, I respond to some of them directly. Sometimes you people, the nice viewers at home, send me direct messages I'm, you know, responding to as well. So I want to take some time to go through some of them and get some response and reaction from my think tank. We begin with Rachel, who writes, Skylar seems to want to please everyone, looking for approval, especially from her parents and investigators. Very confused young girl. Derek Myers, do you agree, disagree on that one?
I agree, and not only is this Skylar, this is normal for a lot of people at that young age. They want to tell you what you want to hear. We hear it from toddlers all the way up to people in their early 20s. They tell you what they want to hear. They want to please you. They want everyone to be happy. And we see that in the interrogation, in the second interrogation. Skylar says, when can I see my mom? When can I see my dad? I want to see my parents. And then she tells them what they want to hear, which is that she possibly cremated this baby, which we know is not true.
Latasha, she's 18, but do you think this jury is looking at her as an adult, or are they looking at her as a kid?
I think they're looking at her as a kid, especially, I know I did, looking at that interview. She was scared to death. She looked like a kid. She looked scared. And I think they're going to look at her as a kid, not as an adult. And I think that's ultimately what's going to get her not guilty.
All right. Catherine has a great one. I think her mother helped with burying the baby. After you give birth, you can't walk through that big backyard, let alone get a shovel and make a grave. No way. This, what Catherine is saying, is a common comment that I've been seeing, that people think that she couldn't have done this by herself. I've never given birth, So I don't know. I can't answer that question. But what if the jury is thinking about this? What impact does that have on the way they come to a verdict here if they think that maybe mom helped?
I definitely think there's a lot of Catherines that are on that jury, because that's something that I thought as well. Look, mom, we clearly know, is domineering. You know, she's sending these text messages that are very controlling to her daughter. Her daughter seems, like guilty of just being a people pleaser and, wanting her mother to love her for who she is, which doesn't seem to be what's happening based on their communication. I wouldn't be shocked if this is a theory, that
so
a lot of people are
how does
thinking.
that impact the jury when they deliberate? If they believe that mom is somehow involved in this?
That's going to
even if there's no evidence of it presented, but they have it in their mind that, and no one's arguing it, but they believe independently, a juror believes that she couldn't have done it by herself. What does that do?
It depends on how much her involvement is there, right? Whether or not she just helped bury the baby, or whether or not she knew about it, whether or not she maybe even helped murder the baby. Because all these things are going to carry different contexts with them. I don't think any of them are going to hurt Brooke. None of them are, no matter how involved she is. Because I think they already sort of view her as manipulating, as controlling, and all of that goes towards that sympathy for Brooke. And I think that's great for her case.
Yeah, I think it makes Skylar look more and more like the victim in the case and less like the defendant.
Absolutely.
And it's not a crazy thought to think this. I mean, I think she also said, what would the neighbors think, the mom, so, I mean, things like that, like what would the neighbors think? She wouldn't want this to get out in public. And her daughter was pregnant at 18.
And everything is in public now. Next one comes from Dan. This is a very interesting note. If you look at it, it says, lawyer, never do this. I don't care if it's jaywalking. Lawyer, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do people in the real world understand this? Not like my world is different because we're in this every day. Again, I'm a former prosecutor. This has been my life, my career. I understand it. But does the general public understand that if you think you need a lawyer, you need a lawyer? That if police are questioning you about anything, you need a lawyer. And if you say I need a lawyer, that doesn't get held against you.
Vinny, I think this is the only comment that you're going to get the entire think tank and every attorney to agree on. Because even if you don't think you need a lawyer, most of the time my client has needed a lawyer, and this unfortunately is just not common knowledge. It's not something that we know, and it's the whole reason Miranda rights are read to people.
What if people believe that they're innocent and believe they haven't done anything? Do they need a lawyer too when they're being questioned by police?
Look, if the police have reached out to you, or you're talking to them in any context whatsoever, you need a lawyer. You need someone to go through to speak to them, because everything you say is going to be used against you. I mean, not maybe it will be used against you. There's no question about it. But if you have a lawyer, at least that cuts off that context between you and the officer, and now you have a shield of protection that's now available that you didn't have before. I've been retained just for this purpose before, and I can tell you from personal experience, it has made a world of difference for my clients.
And how about this? How about the perception that people have that if I ask for a lawyer, it makes me look guilty. So if I didn't do anything, why would I ask for a lawyer? Can the fact that you asked for a lawyer then be used against you?
I mean, they could certainly bring it up that you've asked for one.
And technically, it can't be. No. But in public opinion, I mean, we'd be crazy to say that it isn't, that jurors don't look at that and that a prosecutor doesn't, bring that up. Certainly. I mean, that's kind of a common sense connection.
And I was just going to add that I get these calls all the time. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I get calls all the time. Hey, the police have called me in. Should I go in and talk to them? Most of the time, if the police have enough evidence, they usually have enough evidence against you. You're usually going to talk yourself into getting arrested. So it's not in your benefit to go and talk to the police, because most of the time they already have enough evidence against you to put a warrant out. So absolutely not. If you ever get called by the police, don't go in by yourself.
Derek, have you ever had to call a lawyer? You can remain silent if you want on this one.
All the time, Vinny. I take lawyers to lunch with me and my friends who are police officers. We'll go to lunch for coffee, and I'll bring my lawyer along with me. I take my lawyer everywhere, Vinny, and that's no lie. I got a lot of speeding tickets.
There you go. All right, Sandy has, again, I said it was a common theme. Sandy writes, I think her mother knew about the pregnancy. She probably had something to do with the death of the baby. Now, Sandy, and the reason I put this up there is not because there's any evidence of it or it's the truth. It's just what jurors could potentially be thinking. And Sandy, your thoughts are shared by a lot of folks, but neither side is arguing that in this case. Betty writes, I'm sure Mommy knew Skylar was pregnant and refused to take herself off the high society platform to give Skylar the support and help she needed. But then I wonder if Dad has a bad temper and can be abusive. There's a reason why Skylar is so afraid of her parents. Now, again, I put that up there not because it's true or there's evidence of it, but because this is what people are feeling as they watch these interrogation videos. How important and how does the role of the family play ultimately with the jury? Does it help the defendant, hurt the defendant?
Oh, I think it helps the defendant all day long.
If she's scared, because isn't that also
Yes.
though a motive for hiding a pregnancy and killing a baby and burying it in the backyard so no one will ever find out, so they don't get mad at me?
But it also seems completely disingenuous that mom would get an email saying PT pregnant, what does this mean? And then all of a sudden, notices her daughter dropped weight and doesn't think twice about it. This is a woman who has children herself. I mean, come on. We're not saying the sky isn't blue. Like, she should have reasonably interpreted that her daughter was pregnant. Maybe what mom didn't want to know was fine for mom, or maybe mom helped. Who knows? But either way, works for the defense.
I said it was a theme. Mary writes, for her not to know, meaning the mother, Kim Richardson, shows how shallow their relationship is, dysfunctional family dynamics. And again, this is an interpretation people are having based upon the evidence. Derek, have you spoken with anyone who really knows this family, that knows them? Like, we're watching it from the outside, and we could perhaps be completely missing the target here and basing it on the most stressful situation this family has ever been through, which is, what happened in the interrogation. Have you had an opportunity to speak to anyone that really knows this family?
Well, I have a different definition of friends than most people. I can count on one hand how many friends I have, but then I know a lot of people, and a lot of people know me that wouldn't fit on 20 hands. But I've talked to neighbors, I've talked to long-distance relatives on social media about this family. A lot of them think that she's not capable of this. We heard from Dad earlier today, going back to the dogs. He says that these dogs are very well attentive. One of them sleeps with Skylar. Look, here's what we know. We know that Skylar gave birth, whether it was alive or stillborn, and we know that baby was buried. This likely happened at home. I think the prosecution is not going to dispute that. They're saying that this happened at home. The defense is agreeing that this happened at home. Alive or dead doesn't matter. There was some type of commotion that night to get that baby, rather alive, murdered, stillborn, from outside of that house to the backyard. These dogs, Dad says, would have caught onto that and made a noise. So I want to know, that just really didn't make sense to me when I heard that. And when I'm talking to people on social media, they say the same thing. They say they have dogs, relatives, neighbors, they say they see these dogs. They say that these dogs are attentive, but it just doesn't make sense to me. Where were these dogs? We know that a birth happened, no matter it was alive or stillborn. Where were the dogs?
Brenda. This mom is a big part of this girl's problems. She has put so much pressure on this girl, awful mother. Again, this is important because viewers are seeing the same thing that the jury is seeing.
And there is evidence of this, of that comment. We've seen it through the texts, through the way that she acts, through the way that she talks to her daughter. Manipulative. I mean, you couldn't think of a more classic example of it.
Well, explain this to me, though. And the other part that I see in the interrogation is a daughter who wants her mom.
Absolutely.
Wants her in there.
A daughter who wants to please her mother.
You don't think...
Big difference.
That wants... In the interrogation, the police, I want to see my mom. She wants to see her mom at that moment to please her mom or to be comforted by her mom?
I think to please her mother. I think her mother is probably the person whose opinion she worries about the most. I don't think it's Dad in this case at all. And I think even when investigators are there and potentially, as we later find out, are going to accuse her of murder, either mom knows something about it or mom needs to be there because mom's going to fix it. Mom's the fixer.
I mean, I think she was scared. I think she wanted her mom. I mean, I think her mom was definitely overbearing, but in a situation like that, when you're in a room full of law enforcement and you're scared to death that something's going to happen, you want your mom and dad, regardless of if they are domineering or not. And I think at the end of the day, this is going to come down to whether the jury believes that the state proved that this baby was either dead or was alive. And I don't think that the state has proved that at all. And I think this comes down to physical evidence. And the state did not prove.
They don't have it.
They don't have it. And I think
They do
so
not
regardless
have it.
if the mother was involved, the father was involved, they don't have that evidence. So I think that's reasonable doubt in itself.
Aaron writes, I still have questions regarding the text from mom where I think she was asking Skylar if she asked the doctor about her stomach, and she mentions that even dad was questioning her stomach. This gets back to the whole issue of she wants to get back into shape. And the prosecution has used the post-delivery text messages as their key pieces of evidence, that all she cares about is a flat stomach. Is there a way that can be enough, that a juror can look at, hey, look at the way she was so cold and callous, she just wanted a flat stomach, that's why she killed the baby.
I mean, Vinny, I don't think that's why she killed the baby. I think that's what she said to please her mom. However, this also says to me, how did mom not know? I mean, you can gain weight in your stomach. You don't gain 30 pounds in your uterus, okay? That's a different ball game. And her mother has kids. She's going to know what a pregnancy looks like. I'm sorry. I find it very hard to believe that mom didn't have any idea, even if she was pushing it deep, deep down in her subconscious.
I got to go to Derek. I see him out of the corner of my eye. There's movement there. Go ahead.
Well, mom says she knows through this text message, this email, this HIPAA violation. My goodness, she knows she's pregnant, and for Skylar to try to cover that up and backtrack it, come on. She has. They're saying she had eating disorders, meaning she was trying to be skinny. Gains 30 pounds. Come on, what is up with that?
All right, we go to Bill, who says, and this again, it's like full circle today. It goes back to the beginning of the show. I'd like to know what they were thinking, allowing their daughter to attend a second police interview without a lawyer. Is dad so simple to believe the police when they told him they didn't need one? It's like they threw her to the wolves without any form of defense. And at the end of the day, I think that is the huge lesson here. And I know dad wants to protect her.
Yeah.
And in the first interrogation, he says out loud, not to the detectives, but do we need to get a lawyer here? Is thinking that out loud, but then during the course of several days, doesn't reach out to one.
Oh, I think I feel very, very bad for Dad in this situation, honestly. Like, he just seems like he genuinely thought that if he was a law-abiding citizen and he believed that his daughter didn't do anything wrong, maybe she got into a little bit of trouble, but he believes exactly the story that the defense is going to present. I think he thought, no, everything will be fine. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people think, and they're not correct.
Will there be sympathy for him?
Absolutely. I think that they were led into this believing that it was going to help their daughter. And who told them that but the police that then used this to turn this case against their daughter? They were manipulated from the very beginning, thinking this is the way that we're going to be able to help our daughter, to help her get out of the situation because she hasn't done anything wrong, so we have nothing to fear. And this happens over and over and over again with people. They think, oh, I haven't done anything wrong. What do I have to lose by telling them the truth? And you have everything to lose.
He's an everyday person. I mean, they told him that he didn't need a lawyer. He trusted the law enforcement. He didn't think his daughter was going to get in trouble. He was just doing what they told him to do. And he didn't think that this was going to come down to this. Obviously, he would have hired a lawyer. So they were definitely manipulated. And this is just a hard lesson that if your son or daughter or anybody in your family gets called to the police station, get a lawyer.
Get a lawyer. And wow. All right. Now, today was day one of the defense case, okay? But the big question, who had a better day today? Was it the defense or was it the prosecution? When we come back, our think tank will answer.